Welcome. If you seek truth, the truth shall set you free. Fear not. And now the agenda with Crystal Risotti.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Agenda with Crystal Risotti. I'm the host, Crystal, and we've got a really deep, heavy show today that I've been kind of dreading doing, to be honest. We're going to be talking about the Democrat Party platform. I am trying my best to be fair and unbiased and all the things, and you'll just have to give me some grace and forgiveness if I get caught up in the content during the episode, because it's likely that I will. I'm just going to tell you up front. Obviously, you're tuning into Revolver Broadcasting. That's the broadcast company, the production company for this show. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribing to Revolver Broadcasting. Make sure that you're commenting on the episodes because that helps us push them out to more people. Make sure you're liking. Make sure you're following if you're on Rumble. And make sure you're sharing this with others because they need to know this content. And sharing is caring. Love that part. So without much ado, I'm going to jump right into this because it's a packed episode. And I'm not going to lie to you, I only made it through like chapter 3, part of chapter 3. So we're going to have an abbreviated version today. Just to let you know, the party platform for the Democrats is 92 pages in comparison with the Republican platform, which was about 20 maybe max. So it's a lot of content, a lot of narrative. It's like they wrote a novel. Again, as opposed to the Republican platform that was very bullet pointed, very poignant and direct. This is what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it. So for a nerd like me who I don't want the emotions, I don't want to hear your emotions, I don't want to hear your appeal to my emotions, it's hard for me to read it. But I'm going to do my best today. So to start off, before we go to the site, really, I just want to tell you some of the observations that I had when I read this overall. It's going to be the high-level observations because you get caught in the narrative and it's so deep and detail-oriented, and I'm kind of a big-picture kind of girl, so I had to reverse engineer it back up and come up with some things that I observed. One was that Trump is mentioned 150 times in the Democrat Party platform. And just as a comparison, Biden was mentioned 7 times in the Republican platform. So that's a big, huge difference, and it kind of paints the picture of where their focus really is. Is it on you, the constituents? Is it on us as their constituents as a whole? Is it on we, the people of America? Or is it focused more on the hatred for Trump? I'll let you decide. Another thing is the difference in the pages. Like I said, Republican Party platform is 20 pages or less. It wasn't in a page format, so I'm guessing. But the Democrat is in a page format. It's a download, and it's 92 pages. So there's just a huge difference there. Also, I noticed there's a lot of pandering to the identities. For example, they dedicate the platform to the Native Americans around Chicago. That was a little weird to me, but okay. I mean, not that they shouldn't recognize the different. I call them races. I've had that argument with people. It depends on your definition of race. Not that they shouldn't recognize that. I mean, we all should, but every time you call it out, it's a differentiator. It pulls them out, right, and highlights them as opposed to the others. So I just found that a little weird. And then the rest of it, obviously, is catering to the other identities. I'll just say that as a full stop adjective. We're talking people of color, the LGBTQ people, whatever box they could put people in is who they were pandering to, and they call it out. Also, as I mentioned, the Republican platform is very bullet pointed, direct. This is what we want to do, and here's how we're going to do it. It's just the Democrat one is just so full of narrative. I fell asleep basically in my mind while I was trying to read it. I just couldn't process all of the content, and I think that's intentional, just so you know. And I didn't see a lot about what they're going to do. There's a lot of talk about what they claim to have done, and just very little content about what they're going to do. And I noticed the last paragraph, generally speaking, of every section was a Trump and Republican extremists, is what we're called in there, Republican extremists and Trump bashing paragraph in almost every section. That last paragraph, you can go look at it and just zone in and tell me what you think, because I picked up on that, and that pretty much was another reason I'm having a hard time doing this content. I'm not appreciative of that. I don't know if you are, but I'm not. So let's go on to the website and look at just some of the chapters. We're just going to scroll through this. I'll read them off to you. But like chapter 1 is on growing our economy from the bottom up and middle out. That's the preamble that you're seeing now. We'll get past that. There's lots of fun content in that too. But chapter 1's about growing our economy from the bottom up and middle out. They're talking economic progress, investing in America, good jobs, small businesses, agriculture, fighting poverty, ending special interest giveaways. Chapter 2 is rewarding work, not wealth. I'm not going to go into all the subtopics in these. I'll just tell you the highlights of the chapter titles. I told you they wrote a novel. Chapter 3 is lowering costs. Chapter 4 is tackling the climate crisis, lowering energy costs, and securing energy independence, which is very ironic to me that they're claiming that. But okay. And then chapter 5 is protecting communities and tackling the scourge of gun violence, and we knew that was going to be there. And chapter 6 is strengthening democracy, protecting freedoms, and advancing equity. So they're talking about judges and voting rights. That one is probably one you're going to want to look at, since they're talking about destroying our Supreme Court, essentially. So definitely look that one up. Chapter 7 is securing our border and fixing the broken immigration system. Again, so ironic. Chapter 8 is advancing the president's unity agenda. And I wondered what that was, so I am going to deal with this a little bit. So here's the things that they're calling the unity agenda. They're calling it beating the opioid epidemic, investing in mental health, protecting kids online, strengthening Americans' data and privacy, and promoting competition. I'm not sure what the competition part has to do with that, but okay. And then ending cancer and meeting our nation's sacred obligation to veterans and military families. Now, just that last one right there, they've had over 3 years to do this stuff. Just saying. And I don't know of any contribution really that they made to veterans. And I know they didn't make much to the military families. Just look at the ones that were killed in Afghanistan and how they treated them, their families. And then chapter 9 is strengthening American leadership worldwide, and they list a bunch of countries there and generalities. So again, I want you to go and read this yourself, because I'm not going to be able to cover it all in this episode. So let's just dive right in. You'll notice that some of those topics sound pretty good. And I could see why people would look at those and get sucked in. But again, do not stop with the headlines. Dig in, do the research, and put the work in. We will do that for you to some degree, but at some point you have to be responsible and look at it yourself, and we can help you with that. We're providing you the resources, and we want you to do that. So whatever we can do to help, we'll do, but we can't make you read it. So do your best. Go read. Uh, so starting with chapter 1, I'm not reading everything in these things. I've got some stuff pulled out and I'm just going to make comments on it. So it's not going to be word for word, but one thing that I noticed is just in this chapter alone, Trump is mentioned 12 times. That's more than the entire Republican Party platform mentioned Biden, because it was 7. One thing they claimed is they added 16 million jobs, and they said not only recovering all the positions lost during Trump's botched handling of COVID, but also adding 6.3 million more than existed before the pandemic, surpassing the pre-pandemic projections for the labor market. So I did a little homework on that. You're welcome. According to factcheck.org, and you know, if you've been watching me, that I don't like to use right-leaning sources. And the reason why is because I want as non-biased sources as I can get, but also I want to go straight to the source that the left would use, right? Or the source itself of whatever I'm trying to promote or talk about. So I use factcheck.org on this one. And according to factcheck.org, it specifically stated employment under Trump was positive until the economy lost 20.5 million jobs in April 2020, 1 month, as efforts to slow the spread of the novel coronavirus led to business closures and layoffs. By the time Trump left office in January 2021, employment had partly rebounded, but was still 9.4 million jobs below the February 2020 peak. Okay, I can take that. But it goes on to say the country gained nearly 3 million jobs back in May of 2020. Trump didn't do anything special, is a quote from Holtz Eakin, who was an advisor to the late Senator John McCain. We were just talking about him earlier, 2008 presidential campaign. They went on to say, we started to recover. We especially recovered in 2021 when Biden happened to take office. A recovery that was going to happen no matter who became president. So that's factcheck.org, basically saying it wouldn't have mattered who was president, but it did start to come up under Trump, and most of it was lost under Trump. And then it just continued to gain from there, but it's not anything that Biden did, is the bottom line. Back to the platform, it says, during this administration, 30 states from Mississippi to Pennsylvania have seen record low unemployment. And the run of low unemployment nationwide hasn't been this long in over 50 years. So I did a little homework on that too. You're welcome. Unemployment is defined as a situation when an employed person is laid off, fired, or quits his work and is still actively looking for a job. Now, how do they know they're still actively looking? It says unemployment can be found even in the healthiest economies, and many economists consider an unemployment rate at or below 5% to mean there is, quote, full employment within an economy. But here's the kicker. If former employed persons go back to school or leave the job to take care of children, could be other family members as well, they're no longer part of the active labor force, and therefore they're not counted among the unemployed. So these unemployment numbers are sketchy at best, because anybody who left the job market, perhaps they decided to start their own business. They're not actively looking for another job, right? So they're not counted in the unemployment, even though they're unemployed. And everybody knows when you start a business, it takes quite a while before you start making an income from it. Same with people who perhaps have elderly parents and lost their job during COVID. They decided to just spend their time taking care of their parents or their grandkids to save daycare money for their kids. None of those people are counted. So the unemployment number is not factual when you take all that into consideration. And I had, if you go to Statista.com and look at the monthly unemployment rate in the U.S. from July 2022 to July 2024, the monthly unemployment rate is on an upward slope to 2024. So it's a visual. You can see it. It starts July 2022, goes to July 2024. It's just on an upward slope. And in 2024, it like completely spikes. So go check that out too. Links are below in the description. You can get to them. Here's another thing that that they put in the platform. Wages are up across the board and rising fastest for lower income workers, Black workers, Latinos, and women. There's the boxes again, segregated boxes, because we have to have segregation again, apparently. So they're looking at it and segregating those different people groups into boxes and calling out that they're making more money. So I did some research on that too. Minimum wage varies by state, but let's just talk California for a minute because, they supposedly make a lot of money there. In 2020, the minimum wage was $13 an hour, and now it's $16 an hour. So it's a 23% increase, which sounds really huge, right? And then fast food workers are making $20 an hour. And according to Forbes, here's what's happening. Fast food companies are massively replacing staff with kiosks for ordering and robots and AI for back office staff. That's contributing to people losing their jobs. And prices of food has risen, restaurants are closing, et cetera, et cetera. There's a massive closure of restaurants. If you do the work, you'll find it online about all these restaurants in California that are having to shut down because they can't afford the minimum wage increases. But even if you're doing a 23% increase in minimum wage, guess what? You got to take taxes out of that. And that is most likely to put them in a different tax bracket. So they have to pay more taxes. And plus, it doesn't help with the inflation. So what are they really gaining by this minimum wage increase as a worker? I'm pretty sure I've seen testimonials on different social media platforms where it's not helping them at all. They're still hurting because of inflation. So they also claim that wages are rising faster than prices, and inflation today is down nearly 2/3 from its peak. And again, if you're looking at the inflation numbers, go to it's usinflationcalculator.com. That's a good reference. And it gives you the annual inflation by month. So in 2024, let's go back to 2021. In 2021, the average inflation rate was 4.7. In 2020, the average inflation rate was 1.2. So look at that jump, 1.2 to 4.7 the next year as the average. In 2022, the average was 8 for the inflation rate, 8%. And then it dropped down in 2023 to 4.1%. And you heard everybody claiming, oh, the inflation rate's dropping. It's coming down. The economy's doing great. But use your head and look back to what it was in 2020. 1.2%. So yeah, it's dropped significantly from 2022 to 2023, but it's still well over what it was in 2020, which was the baseline that I want to use because of the election.
The problem is there's still an inflation rate.
Yeah. Yes. Right. And in 2024, it's dropping a little bit more. So it started off in January at 3.1. Last month it was 2.9. So it's dropping over this time period. But don't be stupid, people. They do this every election. Every election, it comes down because they know they got to persuade the voters towards their side, whoever's in power. So don't be dumb. This is the other thing. People have told me, oh, the president has nothing to do with the inflation rate. Well, this clearly shows they do, because they're able to influence the inflation rate to go down, down, down during an election year. I'm just saying, that's not natural. It happens on a cycle. Go back and look at it historically. Okay, so manufacturing. Here's something they say about manufacturing. And as the climate crisis makes the shift to clean energy more urgent, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, making the world's biggest investment ever in building renewable energy, electrical vehicles, and other green technologies here at home. Here's my point on that. Are you aware that in the Inflation Reduction Act, they stuck the Green New Deal stuff in there that was supposed to kill our economy, basically? They stuck Green New Deal content in it. So it's just under a different name. And look at what's happening to our economy. They also love government mandates. They love them. And so that also is something that we can expect that's contributing to the economy that we have. Whenever you put more regulations on a company, they're going to pass that cost down. It's just how it works. So then I want to point out how many auto vehicle manufacturers are either pulling or reducing their electric vehicle efforts. I can name a couple. Ford, GM, Hertz is selling all their EVs, and they're having a hard time even selling them off the lot. They don't want to. Hertz doesn't even want to have them in their portfolio of vehicles to rent because nobody's renting them. And their Hertz is going back to gas-powered vehicles. That's according to Axios.com. So there's that. They go on about good jobs, and they, quote, created nearly 800,000 manufacturing jobs and 880,000 more jobs in construction, building roads, factories, and dreams of our future. I don't know about you, but I live in Indianapolis, and all this year we've had nothing but construction and shut down roads, and it's still going on everywhere. Even the highways have been shut down. I've never seen that in my lifetime where they've shut the entire section of a highway down. But that's been going on. So I'm going to give it to the left. They do seem to do more around road construction and infrastructure. But guess who's paying for it? You and me. It's through taxpayer money and government investments, which is essentially taxpayer money. They are not a business. They're not a profit business. The government is not. So don't mistake that either. It kills me when everybody says, but the government's paying for it. No, you and I are. That's our money going towards it. So I'm happy to contribute to the infrastructure if we get our roads fixed. But the problem that we've been seeing is there's a whole lot of patching and not a lot of fixing. So it just gets patched and then it comes back the next year. And so we're in this never-ending cycle. Something else that they claimed in the platform is more Americans are employed in these fields and clean energy today than ever were under Trump. They had to throw that Trump part in there. And then they said President Biden believes that you shouldn't have to go to a 4-year college to live a good middle-class life. And my response is, then why the heck are we paying for loan forgiveness then? I mean, they make it sound like in this platform that they're all about trades and kids going for trades and all that. But yet you're doing loan forgiveness for loans for kids that didn't do trade work. So it's just very confusing to me. I don't understand. Another thing they claim is our Investing in American agenda is expanding job training partnerships between high schools, community colleges, unions, and employers. We have 1 million trainees enrolled in registered apprenticeships today. And I personally support that. I think that's a great thing. But alas, high school kids can't read or do math proficiently. And we talked about that in the global education episode. So if you haven't watched that, you need to go back because I'm explaining where that's all coming from and why we're seeing that. And the fact is, across Indiana at least, and I'm pretty sure the nation, the average proficiency in reading and math for schools is in the 40 to 50 percentile, which is still an F in any grade book I know of. That means only 40 to 50% of kids can actually do math at their grade level or read at their grade level. That's despicable to me. So is that why they're pushing trades now? Because kind of hard to do college when you can't read and do math. Although that's part of the global education episode too. We're talking about the colleges and how they're admitting these kids. And then professors are struggling to teach because the kids can't read or the kids can't do math. It's just crazy to me. Another thing they claim is, they said this in their platform, extreme Republicans have proposed gutting funding for registered apprenticeships in this year's budget. They say, we'll keep making historic investments in them to keep expanding opportunity, including by partnering directly with unions. Okay, first of all, somebody go find where Republicans have proposed gutting funding for registered apprenticeships. If you do, I might have a cash reward for you. I don't know. But put it in the comments or reach out to us on the contact form on revolverbroadcasting.com, because I don't know where they're getting that from. And this is one of the things that I get fired up. Sorry, I said I was going to try to be fair and unbiased, but I can't. I just can't with this. So I don't know what they're talking about there. Another thing they claim, President Biden and Vice President Harris are proud to lead the most pro-union administration in history. And so you're seeing, that's the second paragraph where they talked about unions and they're pro-union. Now, I'm not anti-union per se. I believe the unions had a place when they started. They were very needed and very important back then. But in our day and age, I have seen too many stories of people who should be fired who cannot be fired because the unions won't let them fire them, or even corrective actions can't be done against these people because of that, or overprotecting certain identities, if you know what I mean, and defending that. And I don't see a lot of good coming out of them. I don't know what the purpose of them is now. If you're a union worker, you probably love it. I get that. But if you're not a union worker, I struggle to find the point of it in today's society. I don't understand. I just see a lot of, they get away with a lot and people abuse the union. But the union also abuses people. My personal story was, I worked as a cashier when I was younger at a grocery store. Nobody told me it was union. I worked part-time there. I maybe made $60 a week at that point, and they took $50 of it a week for the union dues. And I was like, what's the point of working here? I'm making $10 a week, really? And what are they doing I never had talked to anybody in the union. Had never had any interaction with the union, had no idea what they were there for. They're just taking my money. And I'm getting nothing for it. So I ended up quitting that job because what's the point, right? Another thing they claim, we also raised the minimum wage for federal contractors. I'm going to stop there for a minute. Did you hear that? Federal contractors to $17.20 an hour, and we'll keep pushing Congress to increase it to at least $15 for all Americans. Okay, so what about the non-government workers? They don't count? They don't matter? Why are government workers treated better than everybody else? Not really sure about that. Don't know. But that's what they're all about. The next section that I went to was their quote about fighting poverty. And the first paragraph in that section is all about how the Biden administration worked to reduce poverty. And that sounds really good until you figure out how they calculate poverty. What is poverty? And you ask 50 people and you're going to get a different answer from all 50. But there is an actual mathematical equation to defining poverty. And I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but when I learned that a few years ago, I thought, well, that doesn't even make sense. because it's across the United States. So you're taking into account like California, New York, East Coast, and West Coast companies that pay more or people that make higher wages. So it could be middle class in the middle of the country, but it's poverty because it's a national poverty level. So it's skewed. It's very skewed. Another thing they say, the American Rescue Plan drove poverty to record lows in 2021. It expanded the child tax credit and made it available to all low-income children for the first time. Okay, I have to stop there because of this statement, it expanded the child tax credit, which is a tax thing on your forms, and they say they made it available to all low-income children for the first time. Children don't pay taxes. So what do they mean by that? They made it available for all low-income children? And for the first time, I don't understand that because the child tax credit has been around for my lifetime that I know of. And it didn't ever restrict poor people from claiming it. So I don't know what they meant by that either. I have no idea what they're talking about there. But this is just...
Sweatshop workers?
Maybe. Trafficking workers. Child trafficking workers. I want you to get the gist of what I'm doing here because, again, I can't cover the whole platform. But you have to critically think about what they're saying in here and really break it down and try to figure out what do they mean. And it's really hard to figure out what they mean because there's just so much narrative. They're saying they helped to slash child poverty by nearly half. That child tax credit move they made tripled the maximum earned income tax credit for millions of low-income workers, so their taxes wouldn't push them deeper into poverty. Here's another claim. It kept 8 million families in their homes, child care centers open, and small businesses on their feet. Okay, so I thought about that, and I thought, how do they know that? What are the sources from that? Is this just a claim? Like, I don't have time to look into it, right? But at the end of all of these claims, they say not a single Republican voted for the bill. They just have to call that out. I don't know what that means, but I can guarantee you if you went back and looked at this bill they're talking about, the American Rescue Plan, they packed it with pork. And what does that mean? They love to take a bill about a topic and call it about a topic, and both sides do it, just so you know, and then fill it with earmarks, like special interest group perks, or this bucket of money, by the way, is going to go over here, reallocate it over here. And it's a way of rubbing elbows with their friends, essentially, and with lobbyists and special interest groups. So my guess is if not a single Republican voted for the bill, it probably wasn't because they don't want people out of poverty. It was because there was other stuff in there. And by the way, that happens all the time. One side will make claims about the other. And again, it happens on both sides about they didn't vote for that bill. And they'll just refer to the title of the bill. And unless you go and read the bill, you won't know why they didn't vote for it. And it also happens on the local level, just so you know. So don't take anybody's word for that. Don't take anybody's word about, well, the Republicans didn't vote for it or the Democrats didn't vote for it. Go and look at why, because there's usually a reason for it. The topic about this poverty, though, I want to go back and talk about the UN because this is all part of the income equity plan that was pushed by the United Nations as part of the Sustainable Development Goals. There's an actual title in the 18 Sustainable Development Goals for poverty. And if you look at what they did in this whole paragraph here, and you tie it back to the UN's poverty goal, you can make a clear connection there. And then think about this. So equity means equal outcome, not equal opportunity. So they want everybody to have the same equity outcome. So think about this. If there's 2 people and one of them has 7 pieces of candy, and the other one has 3, so 10 total. How do you make that equitable? You have to ask the one who has 7 to give up candy to the other one so that they both come to 5 each, right? So it's never about raising somebody that's of a lower class or social status or income. It's never about raising them up. It's always about taking the ones that have more and making them give it up. And if you don't think you'll be caught by that, you better think again, because I guarantee you have more than the homeless guy down at the river or under the bridge. You have to look at the lowest common denominator in this case. So if you think you wouldn't be touched by it, guess what? There's always going to be somebody who has less than you, and you are going to have to forfeit some of what you have in order to make everybody equitable and have an equal outcome. So I just wanted to kind of point that out when they're talking about poverty. Chapter 2 is about rewarding work, not wealth. And Trump is mentioned 8 times just in this section, just FYI. Again, more than the entirety of Biden references in the Republican Party platform. So they go on to say here, to any American with the ingenuity and drive to make $1 million, President Biden says, great, just pay your fair share in taxes. I am so sick of hearing this. So sick of fair share. Fair share is a very subjective term, very vague, very open-ended, depends on who you ask as to what the definition is. It's never defined. It's just fair share, fair share, fair share. So in terms of taxes, which is what they were talking about here, the top 1% pay the majority of taxes in our country, even with the loopholes that they can claim. They're saying a hedge fund manager or CEO should never pay a lower tax rate than a teacher or a firefighter. A company with billions of dollars in profits should not pay $0 in taxes. Well, throughout our history, the Democrats have been in the party that's won elections and things throughout our history, right? We tend to go back and forth, Republicans, Democrats, whatever. They've had all these years. Biden's been in office for 50 years. Just him alone. And they've had a chance to define fair share, to make these changes for taxes that they want to take out loopholes. Because that's what's happening. The top earners have loopholes in the tax code. Everybody knows it. The politicians all know it, because guess what? They probably are using them too. On the salaries that the government jobs pay, there's no way they could be millionaires or billionaires. No way. And yet they are. They go into office like you and me, and they come out millionaires and billionaires. So how's that happen? I'm pretty sure there's some kind of tax break or loopholes being used there. They've never fixed them. Never fixed them. And I keep going back to the fairest tax is the flat tax, where you have a flat tax of 12% and everybody pays 12%, no matter who it is. Now, income tax and sales tax are different. You'd have to calculate that all out, but I'd say do the same thing on both. And then you've got federal, and you got state, and you got local and town and whatever. So it would all have to be calculated out to a total percentage, but it could be done. And why not just give everybody a percent? They have to pay. There's no loopholes then, because you're not writing pages and pages of tax code. It's a very simple statement. Everybody will pay 12% in income tax. Of course, you have also the different states that have different costs of living and wages and all that. But again, 12% in California of $100 is not going to be the same as 12% of $50 in the Midwest, right? So you make more, you pay more, regardless. 12% is 12%. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring out there. It's just a big scam. In 27, they go on to say, in 2017, he enacted a reckless, unpaid-for tax cut that overwhelmingly benefited the very wealthy and biggest corporations, and blah, 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 blah. Bashing Trump, again, about the tax cuts that he implemented. Now, he's the one that took the standard deduction and bumped it to $12,000 per person. I believe before that it was $6,000 per person, if I remember correctly. And you can put it in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he doubled the standard deduction per person. And I, for one, as well as my family members, on top of that, also saw more money in our weekly checks and biweekly checks. So I don't know what they're talking about here. They're claiming that Trump was telling donors behind closed doors at Mar-a-Lago, you're rich as hell and we're going to give you tax cuts. Where is that documented? You got video of that? I don't know. Is that just a claim again? Hard to tell. But just so you know, going back to the standard tax cuts, the tax laws that Trump put in that gave us more money in our pockets, get ready because those are scheduled to end. And I guarantee you Democrats are not going to extend it. So imagine next year, you won't see it for the year until the year after because it's always, a year behind. But let's say they expire after 2024. So in 2025, you're going to see a little bit less out of your check. But then you get to 2026 and you file your taxes and find out they changed the standard deduction from $12,000 per person to $6,000 per person. And now you have to be taxed on that extra $6,000. Oops, forgot to tell you that. How are you going to feel? Because those are scheduled to end. They go on to say, under President Biden's plan, again, this is Biden, and I think they changed everything to Kamala after the fact because I just pulled it up earlier and I did my research before this happened, and I see now they're talking about Kamala, Vice President Harris. So you'll have to forgive that, but my notes are on Biden. Either one represents the Democrats, so just take it at that. They're saying no American earning less than $400,000 a year will pay one single penny more in federal taxes, period. We're working to end special interest giveaways and to make sure all Americans play by the same rules. Again, there's that equity piece, equal outcome. And instead of exploding the national deficit, our plan 14 cuts it by $3 trillion over the next decade, delivering real results for the American people in a fiscally responsible way. Now, I found that to be interesting about the 400,000. And how did they pick that number? You've probably heard other people talk about this. Because all the D.C. politicians, including the president, earn less than 400,000 as income for their jobs in D.C., which I could argue should not be jobs. It should be volunteer work, but that's just me. They don't typically earn $400,000 or more, but the one person who did was Dr. Fauci. And last report, his salary was $417,000, which is just over that limit. But nobody else in government makes that much. So I'm guessing that's how they came up with that $400,000 number. What do you think? Because everybody else comes close to it at like 300 and some thousand. I found that interesting. Here's something they said. Trump doesn't care. They literally said that in the platform. It says a tax break that Trump protected for himself and other corporate landlords in his 2017 tax scam. Okay, and I'm not giving you full sentences. I'm giving you parts of sentences, but just think about how this sounds. Trump doesn't care. The 2017 Trump tax scam. Trump's billionaire giveaways and extreme tariffs, which is taxes on other countries. They go on to, here's a whole paragraph. Republicans are doubling down on Trump's failed approach and have proposed $1 trillion in new corporate tax cuts. They'll repeal the estate tax so the wealthiest 0.1% of Americans can pass wealth on to their heirs tax-free. They'll give American billionaires an average $3.5 million tax break, a giveaway nearly 50 times bigger than what the average family earns in a year. House Republicans have vowed to pay for part of all of that by cutting Social Security and Medicare for everyone else. Economists say Trump's billionaire giveaways and extreme tariffs will slow growth, cost jobs, and trigger a recession in his first year back in office, raising taxes on middle-class families by $2,500 a year and adding trillions to the deficit. Democrats have a different view. We don't believe we should add $5 trillion to the deficit. What? There is nothing in that paragraph that's true or that's you can find evidence for. Nothing, including the fact that they don't believe they should add $5 trillion to the deficit. What changed? They weren't worried about the deficit all along. In fact, they pressured everybody to agree to everything to stop the shutdown of the government. They pressured it. How much did that Inflation Reduction Act cost us? How much did it cost us overall for all of the different initiatives they've done for green energy and add to the deficit? They don't. There is no evidence you can show me that they care about reducing the deficit. None. There's also no evidence you can tell me that would show me that Trump or extreme Republicans or House Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare. Nothing. In fact, they've come out and said differently. And if you watch the last episode on the Republican Party platform, it's pretty clear where they stand on Social Security and Medicare. Just go back and watch that. Look at their platform. Okay, Chapter 3, Lowering Costs. They say Donald Trump hasn't offered a single solution to lower families' costs. We just talked about the Trump tax cuts that doubled the standard deduction for people. We just talked about that. So where are they getting that from? They go on to say he wants to drag America backwards with extreme import tariffs that will make life more expensive for folks nationwide. That's taxes on other countries when they ship imports into the U.S. Well, exports to them, imports to us. And I think that's a fair thing to do. I don't think it raises costs for us. And if it does, so what? That just makes American-made products cheaper, right? They go on to say, and for corporations that hiked prices and doubled profits since the pandemic, Trump wants to reward them with a massive tax cut. Again, here's a blame shifting thing that they're doing because it's never anybody's fault. If you didn't watch the Faith, Family, and Politics podcast on Friday or Saturday morning is when it aired. If you didn't watch that, this goes along with that, so you might want to. But whenever they talk about doubling profits by corporations and things like that, they're blaming corporations for what the government has chosen to do. They don't like capitalism at all. These people are Marxists. They don't want capitalism. We also have a situation with crony capitalism, which is not true capitalism. It's greedy people. We do have a situation with that, but they're not. Trump has never said he's going to give these corporations a massive tax cut. Plus, listen to the wording that they used. And for corporations that hiked prices and doubled profits since the pandemic. Again, they're trying to push that blame onto the corporations. They're blame shifting for what they did. Because this kind of goes back to the supply chain issues. That's a whole nother topic. But with the supply chain issues, if you're not familiar with what happened there, I don't know, the government told port workers that they had to have the jab or they couldn't work. So people lost their jobs. that worked at ports, shipping ports, that receive goods from other countries. So, especially in the LA port, those ships were backed up like in a huge line, and they weren't being able to be processed very quickly. They weren't getting through. The goods were not getting into the country. The grocery store shelves got light. The supplies that we need for our everyday lives, like toilet paper, go figure, weren't able to come into the country in an efficient way. So that all got backed up. And then California, where there's several ports, decides to tell truckers that unless you have an electric vehicle, you can't come in. So these trucking companies don't have electric vehicles stocked up. That would mean they would have to sell all of the vehicles in their fleets and buy all EVs. And some of them refuse to do it, so you got a shortage of truckers then. Some of them, it takes time to do that. So, even independent truckers would have to do that. So it just backed everything up. And that wasn't Trump's plans that did that. That was this government's plans, this administration's plans that did that. But they want to blame corporations for price gouging. Yeah, they want to blame the companies because they're saying they're price gouging. If you ask the companies, and several of them have come out and said, it's not that, it's the cost of fuel, it's the cost of supplies, everything. Everybody knows all this stuff has gone up. We're not stupid, so, there's that. Okay, they go on to say independent analysts say Trump's MAGA tariff and tax plans will increase inflation, cost 3 million American jobs, and slow growth, triggering a recession in his first year back in office. And they say Trump's plan will increase costs for working families by $2,500 a year. Again, where's the evidence for any of this? For as many economists that they can pull out, the other side can pull out economists on the other side of the fence that will say the opposite and contradict them. And so stop with the emotions. Stop playing on people's emotions. Stop gaslighting. The next section is healthcare and prescription drugs. We're getting close to the end here because I just couldn't do anymore. The first thing they said was healthcare should be a right in America, not a privilege. Okay. Notice the words should be. They don't say healthcare is a right in America, not a privilege. They say it should be. Why did they say that? Because it's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Bill of Rights. It is not a right. You want to make it a right, take it through the legislative process and make it a right. But it isn't. And why haven't you made it a right? You've been in power for almost 4 years. If it's so big, so important to you, you could have done it. You have the Senate. Okay, sorry, I'm getting on a soapbox. What happened to personal responsibility? If you want health care, it's available. In fact, Obama put in the Affordable Care Act, which is not affordable at all. And if it is affordable, here's the trick they pulled. They reduced the benefits that you get. So it's like basically a major medical policy in a lot of cases. So it doesn't pay for your doctor visits until you meet your deductible, or and it doesn't at all. It depends. Like the insurance I just got with a new job doesn't cover any hospitalization at all. ER visits, nothing. So I had to buy a separate rider to cover the hospital. They jacked up our insurance system as far as healthcare goes. But if you're on the Affordable Care Act / Obamacare, they probably do pay for all that. It's available to you. It doesn't matter if you make money or not, and it's income-based. Your pay for it is income-based. So it isn't a right necessarily, but everybody has access to it. And a lot of people don't have to pay for it. If you don't have the money to pay for it, you just don't get it. Simple. And then they want to blame hospitals and all the medical professionals for the costs of emergency services and hospital services and primary care physician services and so on. I don't know if you know this or not, but I worked in the field when all this went down. So here's a little insight for you. When the Affordable Care Act went into place, before that, healthcare providers charged a fee, and they had contracts with insurance companies, and the insurance companies would say, okay, for a doctor visit, you charge $50, we'll pay you $50. Or whatever they were going to contractually pay. It could be $35, whatever. Okay, so that was before Obamacare. When Obamacare went into place, they used Medicare and Medicaid, which are both government agencies, reimbursement rates as the standard for even private insurance companies. Okay? What does that mean? Medicare and Medicaid are government agencies. They're not private companies, right? So their reimbursement rates were significantly less than what a normal insurance company would pay. But when Obamacare went into place, the private insurance companies or public, whatever, non-governmental insurance agencies were told that reimbursement rates would go down to what Medicare and Medicaid paid, basically. And those insurance companies took that on and forced it on healthcare providers. So a doctor may have been getting $50 for an office visit from insurance company A, but after Obamacare went into place, they figured out they could drop those reimbursement rates because it was based on Medicare and Medicaid to $35. So your doctor either had to take the hit or drop their fee, right? Why do people become doctors? One of the main things that, yes, they want to help people, but one of the main things is it paid well. Well, guess what? They ripped that away. So there was a mass exodus of healthcare providers from the industry. Doctors quit, retired, whatever, because they weren't making money anymore. Or they became concierge doctors where they didn't accept insurance at all and you paid out of pocket. And in those cases, you got really good care from them. I'm not going to lie. It was really good care. They could spend 2 hours with you if they needed to. But another thing that the Affordable Care Act did was basically instructed providers that they had to try to get their visits for patients down to 15 minutes or less. So you saw this huge shift and people were wondering, why is this happening? I'm going to my doctor and they're trying to rush me out and they're not even listening to me. I saw the shift happen and I heard the reports from my local circle of people and I knew it went right back to that. And in that case, they had to do it because if your reimbursement rate that you get paid from an insurance company is reduced significantly, how do you make money? If you went from making $50 an hour to now you're only going to make $20 an hour, and you used to have one patient for an hour, how do you make up the difference? Volume, right? That's business. It's through volume. So you have to cut your number back as far as time you spend with a patient in order to get more patients through, in order to get the profit margin that you were expecting to have and had before the ACA went into place. Do you see how that works? It screwed up our healthcare system significantly. That's just my own opinion. And I said I wasn't going to do that, but I'm doing it. Okay, so they go on, like I could go on and on. They go on and they talk about Democrats will keep working to grow the healthcare workforce, but they're the ones that are the reason why the healthcare workforce was greatly reduced, because they forced the jab and people didn't want to get the jab and it was mandated, so you lost your job if you didn't. Or the other side of it is, how many people said, or companies said, you can put in an exemption request? Well, now it's come out that a lot of corporations weren't accepting the exemption requests as they were written, or they didn't think they were written well enough, or they just were saying we're not accepting exemptions. And so those people were forced out of their jobs. Okay, so they caused the healthcare industry shortage of staff to begin with, but now they're going to work to grow it until the next pandemic comes along. and they force another job. They also say the administration's cracking down on surprise medical billing and junk health insurance. What's junk health insurance? Define that. Is that defined somewhere? I don't know. They say so patients are no longer ambushed by unexpected bills or scammed into buying low-quality health coverage. I just told you how the Affordable Care Act under Obama made the fact that the health care coverage was bad. It made it low quality. So just so you know, this is a progressive tactic that we've talked about before. Create the problem, create the chaos, and then propose your solution to it. So it's a plan. Like you want a new kettle to boil your water, right? But your husband says, you can't really afford it right now. What are you going to do? You break the kettle, and then you need a new one, and you get your way, right? It's a technique. It's a tactic that they use. I'm not sure that both sides don't use that sometimes. Just be smart and discern it, because they'll do that. So they created the healthcare jacked up mess we're in, and now they're saying they're going to crack down on surprise medical billing and junk health insurance and billing issues, so there's no surprises. Now, I also see objectively a positive side to that, because I am of that same camp. You ought to know what your cost is going to be before you do something medically wise. I don't know that that's really a discussion unless you push for it as a patient, because I've never been given a menu of here are the options and here are the costs. Pick one by any healthcare provider. So to be fair, I see a benefit to that side of it. I don't like getting stuck with surprise medical costs either. And that is something that happens. So I'm going to be fair about that. The other thing that fed into this on the medical billing is regulations. And we talked about that earlier. Democrats love regulations. They love restrictions. They love putting things in place. And their perspective is they're protecting the public by doing that. But in essence, they're taking our right away to choose, and also they're making things more costly. You'll see a shift in that. I work in the regulated industries, and I'm very familiar with the Code of Federal Regulations. The Democrats tend to make more laws, more restrictions, like we're going to ban Slurpees now because the general public doesn't need a 32-ounce drink, which then costs those stores that provided them money, because now they got to junk all the 32-ounce, cups and straws and lids or whatever and get rid of that. That's just a small example of how they love laws and regulations. Very small example, and really a weak one, but one nonetheless. They do it a lot. You'll see a shift. The Democrats are more regulations. The Republicans get in power, there's less regulations, because the Republicans want a free market and they want to be able to let people make their own decisions. So that's just a general comment. They're talking here also about, let me find my place here. Democrats provided funding to forgive $7 billion in medical debt for nearly 3 million Americans. Did you know that? I didn't know that. And the administration is urging states to use remaining funds to do more. It already persuaded credit reporting agencies to exclude many medical debts from credit reports, boosting people's credit scores and prospects for the future. In all, these actions have reduced the total number of Americans with listed medical debt from 46 million in 2020 to 15 million. Democrats will keep pushing to exclude medical debts from credit scoring entirely. So here we have another example of their push for debt forgiveness. They're doing that with school loans. Now they're doing it with medical bills. What's next? Are people going to be accountable at all for their own bills? Or are you and I just going to keep bailing everybody out? Because that's what's happening. I mean, it took me 23 years to pay off my school loans. I did it. I haven't had significant medical bills to speak of. Can't imagine that. But I wouldn't expect you to pay for my medical bills, even if I did have them. I don't understand this logic. It's very much socialism, and they're blatantly outright with it. Here's another thing that I thought was interesting. Vice President Harris, she called for states to provide a full year of postpartum coverage for Medicaid beneficiaries, with 46 states, the District of Columbia, and the U.S. Virgin Islands now taking that step. Did you know about that? I didn't know about that. And I wonder how much that's costing the states. Postpartum, so that means they had a baby, and they want these people, I'll tell you, to be fair, Europe does this. Your maternity leave now becomes a year instead of 3 months. Who's paying for that? And they want paternity to be the same as maternity. So husband and wife can both be off for a year and not work when they have a kid. Socialism. Just telling you, you and I are going to be paying for that. Here's another thing they say. Trump has no plan to reduce healthcare costs for Americans. He and his MAGA allies have spent years working to repeal the Affordable Care Act, trying and failing over 50 times. Now Trump is once again promising to terminate the landmark law, gutting coverage for the 45 million Americans who rely on it for care. Doing so will cost families $13,000 a year and threaten protections for 100 million Americans with pre-existing conditions. It will strip 150 million people of preventative care like cancer screenings. Are you kidding me? And reduce access to mental health and substance abuse treatment. A Republican repeal will also deny life-changing home care to millions of seniors and people with disabilities, and kick young adults up to age 26 off their parents' insurance plans, which I'm going to get mad now. Get ready, because I'm getting mad. This whole thing about up to 26 years old being on your medical plan is ridiculous to me. Why can't we give them the fact that we have faith in them when they become adults to run their own lives and be accountable for them and responsible? Is it because we're, as parents, not teaching them to be responsible? Because there is no reason for a 25-year-old to be on my health insurance. No reason. Especially when you got Obamacare. They could get their own, and it's income-based. It fires me up. But that whole paragraph, oh, that's another thing. And it'll push more of the 500 plus rural hospitals that are already at risk of closing to shut down. Ooh, all the scary boogeymen called MAGA and Trump. All the scary boogeymen. I mean, it is so dumb and obvious that they are playing on emotions. They have absolutely no evidence to back that up. None. Zero, zilch, none. And yet they're making these claims, and when you read the platform, you come out with this kind of rhetoric that they're throwing at you, and you have to make a decision. Are you going to trust the emotion gaslighting that they're doing? Where's the substance? They're telling us all about what the Republicans will do. What about what they're going to do? Why are they not focused in this platform on what they're going to do? If it's so great, they wouldn't have to bash Trump and the MAGA party and the Republican Party and the extreme Republicans so much. Their plan would stand on its own, just like the Republicans did in their platform. Done deal. Put the facts out there and let you and me decide. How about that? Everybody talks about they're sick of politics because all it is people bashing each other. I'll take 7 times mentioning the other side over 150, okay? Which is the party that's all about bashing the other side? Which one? It's in black and white in writing. Facts. Okay, I'm almost done talking about this because I can't stomach anymore, to be honest. I had some more notes about the prescription drugs. They're talking about Democrats capped the price of insulin at $35 a month. Okay, so there's some truth to that. I just want to be fair. But this is more copycat moves because under Trump, he was trying to get companies to cap at $35, but he still made it optional. I get it. And when Biden came in, he actually put the law in to stop companies from charging more than $35. But what that's called is a price cap, just so you know, and that's communist. That's the government saying you as a private company can't charge more than X for your products. And what that does is destroys the free market. It destroys the capitalism. And they're talking about doing this with more things. Kamala wants to put price caps on things you buy at the grocery and, supplies that you need and all that stuff. She wants to cap everything. That is absolutely communism. And they're not even hiding it anymore. Not even hiding it. Another thing they want to do is child care. They're talking about they say they increase federal child care funding by 50%. They want to continue making investments in that, making quality child care available to millions of working families. It's another government program funded by you and me. We're paying for other people's child care. I don't know about you, but I had to pay for my own child care when I worked, and I was a single mom. It wasn't fun, but I found ways to do it, okay? If it means something to you, you'll figure it out. I shouldn't have to pay for it. I shouldn't have to pay for you having 4 kids and you never went to college and all you're stuck with is minimum wage jobs and can't take care of the 4 kids, and then you got to have childcare when you do work part-time because you're at a minimum wage job. I'm not paying for that. Every decision you make in your life matters. You get the choices. There are programs already to help you. I went to college a couple of times. The first time I got loans, it took me 23 years to pay them off. The second time I went, I worked for a company that did tuition reimbursement. And they paid for my education up to a certain amount, and I paid the rest. But, you do what you got to do. Education is also not a right. And I would put childcare in the same boat as education because guess what? They're trying to get your kids into preschool, free preschool, because they're trying to teach them about the genderbread man and gender ideology and the DEI crap, the diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff. And when I say that, don't take that I don't care about other races or other people groups. That's not the point. The DEI program is detrimental and destructive to our society, period. Talking about the program, not the people. Okay, so let's make that clear. All right, then they go on talking about gas and groceries. They actually have a topic of that in their platform. Again, they're talking about the pandemic crushed supply chains, and many companies didn't lower prices after the bottlenecks eased. And they're talking about price gouging and holding them accountable when they don't pass savings on to customers. First of all, this is completely rich to me. If you owned a company that was a supplier to a national corporation and you had to buy in bulk in order to keep the supply chain available for those corporate locations for an extended period of time. Let's say you do that on a regular basis, and let's say you placed an order last year for enough supplies to keep you stocked for this whole year so that you could be a supplier to these other corporations, right? You could send those supplies off to these other corporations. There's always a middleman, Okay? Always a distributor. Walmart's nothing but a company that's a front line for distributorship. That's all they do is distribute. They buy from other companies and sell to you, the consumer. So, you bought a whole bulk of inventory last year, and at the time you bought it, the price was $10 each. And then this year, the price went down to $5 each to buy it, not sell it, to buy it from who you buy it from. Well, do you honestly think that those distributors are going to now take the inventory that they had purchased for $10 and sell it to their customers for $5? Why would they do that? It takes time to catch up when you're talking about the supply chain. They're going to sell their products still this year at $10 until they run out. Well, probably 15 because you got to put a profit margin on there, right? So they're going to consider those parts or those supplies to be $10 supplies until they run out, right? So they're not changing the price on them until they go to buy the supplies for next year. Then when those supplies come in, they paid $5 for them. So then next year you'll see a reduction in price. Do you see how that works? And they're trying to say these companies are price gouging because they're selling supply that they still have from during the pandemic when the prices were so high. It's insane to me. And they're playing on stupidity and ignorance. They're hoping you're stupid and ignorant and that you don't know this information. So I can't take anymore. I'm done talking about this. We only made it through like chapter 3. And again, there's 9 chapters. But I'm done talking about it. I don't want to spend any more time on this platform. You can read it for yourself. The link's below in the description. Make sure you take the time to read it, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican. It's important that we know what these parties stand for. Don't take their word for it. These candidates, first of all, they have a limited amount of time. You're not going to see Kamala get up there and talk about 92 pages worth of content when she speaks. She doesn't have time for that. She's going to pick and choose a few sound bites and then repeat those sound bites throughout the election campaigning. Same with Trump. He does a little better with it, but they've only got like 20 points. So, and they're very succinct, short points. So he has a better chance at talking about more of what they want to do. But make sure you know what they're talking about. Make sure you know what they stand for because they have had to make a commitment in order to be the candidate representing the party to that platform. So make sure you go read them. Don't let the words get in the way. Don't let the gaslighting get in the way. Don't let them sway your emotions. Try to think factually, and just do your best this election. If you want me to talk more about it, you can comment below. I don't plan to. I just can't. But if y'all want to hear more about it, I'm happy to do that for you. Again, you'll find all the links below in the description. Make sure you're going to revolverbroadcasting.com. Make sure you're subscribing on whatever platform you use, whether it be Facebook, Rumble, or the audio platforms, wherever you get podcasts at. Make sure that you're sharing this content out because we need to get more people to think critically about this, especially with this election. We still have time. It's just the beginning of September. So make sure you're getting this content out so that people may be triggered. They may not, I didn't cover the whole thing, but maybe it will present it in such a way that it'll make it clear to them when they read it as to what they should be looking for and what they need to do with that information. So make sure you're sharing it. Make sure that you're checking out on Revolver Broadcasting. We have some news blog articles now. It's really cool. We've got other shows on there. We've got a store with merch. So make sure you're going out and checking all that out. And I want to give a special shout out to Josh, the producer. He's always here with me doing these episodes, and he's such a support. Great company. Make sure you're checking them out and subscribing. And with that, I'm going to say until I see you next time, have a great time.